In this fourth volume, I want to concentrate on defense. The first thing we're going to teach is defensive footwork. Then we're going to teach how to use your knife to counter slash and stop your opponent's blows. Then I'm going to teach you how to avoid cuts and slashes at your knife hand. And then I'm going to go into using your empty hand or live hand defensively. And finally, I'm going to finish with the study of my, which is the study of judging distance. So let's start training. One of the ways to stay alive and uninjured in a knife fight is to develop an impeccable defense. One of the defensive methods that I want to teach you now is defensive footwork. We went over footwork earlier in this presentation and went over all our basic footwork drills. And now I want to show you the footwork you're going to use the most when you're acting defensively. The first is I'm going to go back to that front leg replacement step. As you recall, in that front leg replacement step, we got in our basic fighting stance, and when we sensed or saw that opponent attack our front leg, we pulled it back, touched down, and came back. So you're going to pull it back, out of the way, touch down, and come back in fighting. I'm going to move over here. Camera, get a better angle. I'm going to pull back, vacate that space, and come back on guard. So I'm going to pull back, vacate the space, come back on guard. So when you sense somebody coming at your leg, you want to pull your leg back, and then come right back and be ready to attack and defend. I'm going to have Ron come in now, and we're going to demonstrate this, and then I'm going to show you how you can practice this at home. Come on in, Ron. I'm going to assume my fighting stance, and Ron's going to attack my leg. I'm going to vacate and get out of the way. Vacate and get out of the way. Vacate and stab him. Vacate and cut him. I can cut him here. I can drop 12 on him. I can drop 12 here, or I can just get my leg out of the way and step in. The main thing is you pull this leg back, touch down, and be immediately ready to attack or defend, because you don't know what's going to come. He could come up and cut me, and I may have to parry right there. He could throw the rear hand, and I have to continue my attack. All right? Now, the way I want you to train this at home is one person is going to hold his knife high like this, because I don't want you, the person that's attacking, to run in and get this in the eye. So he's going to hold this up high. I'm going to attack Ron's leg, and he's going to pull back. Just like that. I'm going slow to give him plenty of time. That's what I want you to do. One's going to be the aggressor, one's going to be the defender. You want to cut the inside of their leg. Hey, don't go so fast that your friend that you're practicing with can't defend. It doesn't do any good if you smack him continuously in the leg. Feed him at a pace that he can be successful in his defense, then switch off. Another defensive method that you're going to be using all the time as a knife fighter is what I call the single step retreat. I don't care whether you're on offense or defense, you're going to find the need to take one step backwards and make your opponent miss his attack as you can launch your counter attack. So I'm going to demonstrate that really quickly right now, but keep in mind that you're going to use this a lot, so you need to practice it. From your on-guard fighting stance, I'm going to move over here so the cameras can see a little bit better. From your on-guard stance, what I want you to do is push off, take one step, and come back. Push off, step back, and step right back where you were. So you're going to give ground and take it back. Give ground, take it back. You use this a lot in boxing too, the same type of footwork. It's a little bit more abbreviated, but with a knife, you really have to move a lot further than you do to avoid a punch, because the knife has so much greater reach and it doesn't take any power. It just has to touch you with it. So you're going to have to move at least one full step back and then come back. So you're going to give ground, take a step, then take it back. That's the single step retreat. Give ground, come back. Give ground, come back. Give ground, come back. Earlier in this presentation, I spent some time teaching you how to move backwards quickly. When you're fighting with a knife, you're going to use backward movement a lot, especially defensively. Sometimes when you're moving around, your opponent is going to put so much pressure, you're going to find yourself giving ground very rapidly. When you come down, you better be on balance. I want you to practice this a lot. Get in front of a mirror in your training area. Look in that mirror. Imagine your opponent putting forward pressure on you and having to move backward and come down on balance. Let's try that again. Move backward quickly, come down on balance, ready to fight. You may have to squirt out to the side and circle. You may have to run, then get behind your knife. You always have to be prepared to move backwards quickly. Now, remember, when you're giving ground quickly like this, at some point you're going to have to squirt out to the side. You cannot give ground indefinitely. He'll overrun you and kill you. So when you're moving backwards, you may have to push off and give ground to the side, because you can't go back and let him drive you into a wall. You'll be killed here. Keep that in mind when you're moving backwards. Our long-range knife fighting training program stresses forcing your opponent to get past your knife hand to reach you. That means that your knife hand is going to be one of his primary targets. He wants to cut this knife hand, disable it, so you drop your knife so that he can attack your body in safety. We don't want him to cut our knife hand. We want to keep that knife hand in action. So I'm going to teach you a lot of ways now that you can defend. The first one is a basic U. I'm going to have Ron come out here. All I'm going to do when I see that cut or stab coming at my knife hand is I'm going to drop my knife hand down and circle up into a U-shaped motion. It moves like this, in a U, in a U, just like that. So when he cuts real slow motion, I'm going to go like that. Backhands, I go like that. I just drop and U, drop and U, drop and U, drop and U, drop and U. Very easy to make him miss. Now, the beauty of this is, when you pull this defense off, you're in a good spot to counter slash him. Or I can immediately come right in here and finish the fight. I can corkscrew right into his face or neck with that U-shaped motion. I can either cut his hand or I can take him out. Depends on the situation, what I would need to do right there. If I need a quick kill, I may just come in here and kill him right there instantly when I make him miss. If I have more time to be safer, I might come here and cut him and see what that effect was. Maybe then I beat his knife out of his hand. Now I can kill him at will. The basic U, really effective defense. Here's how I want you to train it. We'll switch around here again. Thanks, Ron, for your cooperation. I roughed you up a little bit on that one. One person's going to hold his knife hand out. The other person, the attacker, is going to cut his knife hand. Now, when you're working with your training partner, he's helping you. He's cooperating. Don't come over there and smash his hand like that with all your might. Go gentle at first. Give him a nice, long, straight motion that he can pick up. Aim right at his knife hand and continue. He's going to U out of the way. I'm going to cut it, Ron's knife hand, and he's going to U underneath it. I'm going to backhand. He's going to U underneath it. That's how I want you to train. Don't come in here and see how fast you are and bust him on the thumb. You'll lose a lot of training partners that way. Take it easy at first. Your goal is to help him learn how to make this defensive motion. All right? So don't go faster than what he can be successful in defending at. If you find yourself constantly hitting him, you need to slow down. All right? Let's try it again. I'm going to cut, 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 cut. Now Ron's going to attack my hand. Make a nice good cut at it. Ron did a nice thing there. What he did is he broke his rhythm to see if I was anticipating. That's the same thing I want you to do. Don't anticipate. Force your hand to be there and get it out of the way. Now, you can see him telegraph a little bit in his eye, in his shoulder, and in his arm. Sometimes you'll see somebody just a little bit of change of their focus before they go. You'll see it sometimes in their arm. You'll see it a little bit on their body. You've got to be alert to that. And when you see him go, you. That's the way I want you to practice it. Another defense I'd like to teach you against cuts or stabs at your knife hand is called the fold back. All you're going to do from your on-guard fighting position is, as your arms are out here and you sense that cut coming at it, you're just going to bring your arm and fold it back into your body like this, and then come back to where it was. So you're just going to fold it back, bring it back in tight to your body, let his attack go by, and then you're in a position to counterattack or move. So it just looks like this, just simply folding it back. Sometimes you could take your thumb and bounce the thumb of your knife hand against your abdomen. And that way you keep the blade away from your body and you have a reference point. So you just fold back and touch your thumb to your abdomen and get your hand all the way out of the way. The cut or the stab is coming at your hand. Your hand's out here moving around. He wants to take that hand out of the picture so that he can come to your body and finish you. You sense him cutting or stabbing your hand, you fold it back. Just fold it back, fold it back, fold it back, and come right back on the guard. I'm going to have Ron attack my knife hand really slow so you can see what I'm doing at first. I'm going to extend it so you get a little bit better picture. He's going to attack and I'm going to fold back. Now we're going to pick it up and he's going to go. Go ahead and cut it. Go ahead and cut it. I'm going to let him make contact a couple times now. It's almost a foolproof, fail-safe way to avoid a cut or stab at your knife hand because you totally remove it. You're not U-ing here. You're pulling it all the way out of the way. It's not sticking out at all. And his cut or stab is going to miss it by a mile. Just fold it back out of the way and you can come right back. You can fold back. You can fold back and come on. And come right back on offense right away. You can come back. I like this one a lot too. When you fold back, stab up. It really is deceptive. You fold back and you stab right up the center line just like that. You can almost always take him right underneath the chin into his neck. Remember that fold back. It's really effective defense against cuts and stabs at your knife hand. One of the things any good fighter will tell you is that you can't use the same defense repetitively. When you're fighting, you can't defend the same way time after time. Your opponent will key to that, he'll time you, and he'll take you out. I don't care if you're a boxer or a wrestler or a saber fencer. You have to vary your defense to keep your opponent guessing how you're going to react. One of the defenses I want to teach you now is what we call lift high. When an opponent attacks at your knife hand and you sense that attack coming, you lift your blade up. Lift it a little bit higher in your head and let that attack go underneath your knife hand, and then you're in a good position to drop on it or stab him in the face. You don't use this all the time. You use it judiciously. Lots of times you fold back, you sense it coming, and you lift your knife high. Let it come underneath your blade. You just vacated that space. His attack missed. Now you're going to be in a good position to drop on him. Let me demonstrate this. Ron's going to attack my knife hand, and I cut him, and I cut him, and I cut him, and I cut him. Let's just go a little bit. Just like that. Here's how I want to train it at home. One person is going to be the attacker. The other one's going to be defender. It's the same thing with the basic U and the fold back. So when you attack him, give him a chance to lift that out of the way. Go slow enough that he lifts it out of the way. Go slow enough that he lifts it out of the way. Attack that hand. When you see him being successful, pick it up a little bit. pick it up a little bit until you're getting him a couple times. You should be making contact maybe 2 out of every 10 attempts, 1 out of every 10 attempts. But any more than that, he's not learning. So slow it down so that he can learn this defense. Just like that. Now, remember, your opponent's face is vulnerable. Don't stab him in the eye. Train safe and practice lift high. You won't regret it. It puts you in a great position to go ahead and attack, to finish an opponent very quickly. Remember I talked about that snap cut. When you lift high as a defense, you're in a perfect position to snap cut him on his hairline right here, on the top or crown of his head, right there, and drive all that blood down into his face and blind him. It's a really good way to set up that snap cut at the high line with the lift high defense. Practice it. The opposite of the lift high defense for attacks on your knife hand is the drop low defense. As I've said earlier, you can't have too many responses. You can't have too many variations in your response to attacks on your knife hand. I really like this drop low defense because it puts you in a good position to counter, particularly with a stabbing attack. You can't use it all the time. Like I'm repeating myself, but I want to drive this point home, is you have to mix up your defenses all the time. It's really important. But when you see an attack coming at your knife hand, you can drop down. I almost dropped the knife down to my thigh like this. Gets it all the way out of the way. Pulls that knife back, drops it underneath that attacking plane that weapon's coming on, drops it underneath that, and poises me for that upward stab. I'm going to have Ron come out, and I'm going to demonstrate this defense. Lots of times, you hit him in the elbow or in the face. Sorry, Ron, that didn't feel good. I clipped it right on the elbow. Even with that stabbing tip here, it doesn't feel that great. You can see how easy it is to take your opponent when you drop that knife down below his attack and then rise suddenly with an upward plunging stabbing attack. Very effective. Train this at home like this. One person is going to attack, the other person is going to drop his knife out of the way. I'm going to have Ron attack me. I'm going to drop my knife out of the way and cut and stab back. Stab back. Stab back. So practice dropping your knife hand out of that plane. Stab my hand. Use the point. You can go to the abdomen too very easily from there. When you drop your knife down and clear that line, you can shoot it right underneath his arm, right there. You can shoot it into his hand, shoot it into elbow. You almost always catch something though if you drive upward in your counterattack when you evade by dropping low. You want to practice this, switch off back and forth. Now, remember, when you're raising, you want to put on a fencing mask for this. Don't even try this without a fencing mask. It's too dangerous. You're liable to stick each other in the eyes. So one person drops, the other person counters. Be gentle, be considerate of your training partner, and be safe as you train this. Circling your knife hand with a big motion using your whole arm to the right or to the left is another good way to avoid a cut or stab at your knife hand. What I want you to do to practice this is come over, get in your training area, get in front of the mirror, come in your fighting stance, and imagine someone cutting or stabbing your hand. As you sense that, I want you to circle your knife hand to the right and make a circle. And I want you to come back. Now, the same thing, I want to circle to the left. Circle right, circle left. I don't want you to do this. Just move your wrist. That won't get your knife hand out of the way. You've got to move your arm and vacate that space. Move your arm in a circle to the right and get it out of the way, and move it to the left and get it out of the way. So you're going to circle to the right, circle to the left, circle to the right, circle to the left. Come on out here, Ron, and we're going to demonstrate this. Ron's going to cut up my hand, and I'm going to circle. I'm going to circle. I'm going to circle all the way. I'm going to circle around, circle around. Kind of looks like the U that we taught earlier, except you can corkscrew off this motion right into his face. Right in. Right into a stab. Right into a stab. This corkscrewing motion is really effective. It's both defensive and also leads right into your offense. So you really want to get good at practicing this circle motion like this. Cuts at you, he stabs at you, same thing. See what I mean? Really effective. Now, to train this at home, again, one person's going to be the aggressor, one person's going to be the defender. When Ron attacks, I'm just going to circle out of the way. Circle out of the way. Circle out of the way. Now, again, I want to stress, you have to make a pretty big motion. Don't just go like this. It looks like you're doing something, but in effect, you're not moving your arm, you're not moving your wrist. It's really staying in the same spot, and you're likely to be struck. So make your whole arm move, move, move. As you advance in doing this, I want you to practice stepping in. As you circle or corkscrew, you're going to step in behind it, just like that. Just like that. Like that. Like that. Practice this at home. Again, because of the danger on these motions, I really prefer you to wear a 3 weapons rated fencing mask when you practice this technique. Another option for defending cuts and thrusts at your knife hand, getting your hand out of the way, is what I call angle out. When you angle out, you need to combine footwork with your defense. You say you're in your on-guard fighting stance, you sense or see that attack coming at your hand. Sometimes you'll take about a half step to your right, turn your wrist, and feed him the point just like this, and he'll run into the point first. So it's almost like a stop hit, which we're going to get to later, but it's a really good response when it's used judiciously to cuts and stabs at your knife hand. You can also do it to the opposite side, angle out this way. Sometimes you want to move your whole body and get it out of the way. Sometimes you can do the same thing. You can angle this way and stab up, or you can turn your point this way and intercept his hand. But remember that when you're using this angle out defense, it's a little bit more vulnerable to a vertical whip. A vertical whip quite oftentimes penetrates this defense, so you need to be aware of that. Now we're going to show it. Just like that. When you're training this with your training partner, I really prefer when you train this at home that you put on a fencing mask and you put on your hockey gloves. One person will feed, like Ron did, the other will defend, and then you switch roles. Try it. Work with it. It's a good, varied response in your bag of tricks on defense. If you want to be proactive in the defense of your knife hand, if you want to be proactive in keeping yourself from being cut or stabbed in the knife hand, I suggest you learn how to use evasive hand patterns. When you put your knife in an evasive pattern, your opponent's going to have a hard time catching up to it and cutting or stabbing it. The first one I want to teach you is continuous circling. I'm going to have Ron come out, and I'm going to show you an evasive hand pattern using continuous circling to confound his attack and make it hard for him to cut or stab me. Go ahead and go after it. When you sense him keying to you moving to the right, move to the left. See, when you're circling continuously like that, you're making it hard for him to cut you or stab you. It leaves you in a good spot to attack. like that. Another way to confound your opponent's attacks on your knife hand is to use an evasive pattern that mimics the letters in the alphabet. Sometimes I cut my initial L in the air like that. Sometimes I'll cut a Z. You can start at the bottom and work to the top. Start at the top, work to the bottom. Sometimes I'll cut a W like this. Sometimes I'll cut an N and I'll work it backwards. It doesn't matter. Sometimes I'll cut a B, just like that. You can, as long as it's a gross approximation of that alphabet, what you want to do is give a pattern that he can't key to. When you're cutting letters, you cut that Z, you cut that L, you can cut a D, cut a D, cut a D. Keep moving and keep your hand in motion. That's the main thing, and you're varying where your blade's going constantly, so he has a hard time keying on that. One of the ways that you can practice this is to stand in front of the mirror and just practice cutting an L. You can cut an L like that. You can cut an M. You can cut a W. It doesn't matter. As long as you're keeping that knife hand in motion. Pick a letter you like. Get 5 or 6 letters that you're familiar with, making those motions, and practice them in front of the mirror. Then put on your hockey gloves and your fencing mask and have your training partner come out and attack your hand with cuts and stabs, and you use these evasive motions to keep your knife hand safe. That's how you can train that at home. Once you think you've got down the previous evasive patterns I've taught, here's some more that you can use. I use these all the time in my knife sparring. The first I want to show is from our fighting stance. It's a diagonal pattern like this. All you do is you move your knife hand diagonally from your shoulder to opposite hip, just like this. When you see your opponent key to that, switch sides and cut from the opposite shoulder to your forward hip, just like that. That's diagonal evasive pattern. Try to keep it in that window of motion we showed earlier, in here. Don't go too high, don't go too low. Just keep it going like this, then switch. Whenever you see him key, switch. He's going to give you a signal. You're going to see in his face, hey, I'm catching on now, I'm catching on. When you sense that, switch to another pattern. Here's another one I use. Just a horizontal motion like this, from side to side, just like this. This is a very good pattern. It leaves you in a really good position to parry. I'm going to talk about this later when we get more into defense, and counter-cutting and using the knife actively to defend with. But this side-to-side horizontal motion like this is really useful when you sense an attack coming at your face. Your knife's in motion and you can pick it up wherever that attack comes very easily. A hand in motion is a lot faster than a hand that's still. If it's in motion, you have a lot better chance to react quickly than if your hand is still. A still hand is really dangerous in a knife fight. You're really exposed. We're going to go into that later too. So keep that hand moving in an evasive pattern. Just like this. You can come up and down like this with your knife. Just like that. Vertically, up and down, all the time. Again, when you see him key to that, move it side to side or diagonally, either way. Just like this, just like that, just like this. You can go side to side this way too, but go past your body. Try not to get outside that window of motion in any of your evasive patterns. Work on those. They'll stand you in good stead. Now I'm going to have Ron come in, and I'm going to use some more of these evasive patterns I just taught now to avoid cuts and stabs at my knife hand. Just like that. Use your fencing mask and the hockey gloves to protect yourself. The last defense I'm going to teach in this presentation for avoiding cuts and stabs at your knife hand is what I call changing distance. When you're facing your opponent in your on-guard fighting stance, you don't have to keep your knife hand in the same position all the time. You can move it evasively, and you can move it in and out. You can extend it, and you can pull it back. You can keep varying the distance that your knife hand is between you and your opponent all the time. It can be close to him, or you can pull it back to where it's far away from him. So you can constantly vary this distance. I want to show this from the side. I'll extend my knife hand out, fold it halfway back, put it all the way out again, fold it all the way in, put it out halfway, all the way out, fold it halfway back, all the way out, all the way back, halfway out, all the way back. You can constantly vary the distance that your knife hand is from your opponent, so he has a hard time getting a fix on it. When he cuts and stabs it, he thinks it's out here. The next millisecond, you brought it halfway in. He tries again there, you fold all the way back. Now you come all the way out again. You fold back, out. He never knows where that knife hand is going to be in the space separating you. Very hard for him to get a fix on it to stab or cut it. I'm going to have Ron come in here in a second, and we're going to show this. See how Ron has a hard time getting a fix on where that is? Scary, isn't it? When you miss, that blade's coming at you. It's really scary. Practice it at home a lot. Now I want to talk about how you can use the point and edge of your fighting knife to thwart attacks on your knife hand or on your person. How you can actually stop him from landing cuts or slashes on your hand or on your body or your face, your legs. The first defense I'm going to teach is the stop hit. I'm going to have Ron come out here. Ron, if you just stand there for a moment. A stop hit is using a fast, direct motion to intercept a slower motion. If I see Ron wind up to cut number 1, I can intercept that with the stop hit. Try it again. See that? I can stick my point of my knife right in his mouth, rock his head back, and stop his forward motion. So you can use the point of your knife to stop hit. You can also use the edge of your knife. The same thing. When I see him to come up to cut me, I can intercept his motion. Before he delivers that cut, I can intercept with my own cut. So what you're going to do is the basic principle of stop hitting is you use a faster, straighter motion that gets there before your opponent's initiated attack. Just before he starts his attack, I go with a faster attack. If he's going to cut number 3 at my stomach, I can intercept that with a straighter, faster thrust to his face. If he's going to backhand me, I can stick him right in the forearm before that cut even gets launched and stop it dead. That's how you stop hit. Now, it's really useful to learn how to use your point and stop hitting because you keep your body further away from his knife. Every time I use my point, I'm the length of my blade further away. When I use my edge, I have to get closer to apply that edge. When I use that point, I'm further away. So when he cuts, I can move away and intercept his motion with a faster motion using my point. It's really important that you learn to use your point and stop hitting. You can train this at home, and here's how I'd like you to do it to start with. One person puts on his 3 weapons rated fencing mask and his hockey gloves and his trainer. What he's going to do is he's going to cut the 12 angles of attack very slowly. You're going to cut 1, and I'm going to stop hit. Number 2, I'm going to stop hit. Number 3, I'm going to stop hit. Number 4, I'm going to stop hit. Stop there. Notice, I don't stand there like a pillar of salt. I have to move. I have to move to get the right angles to apply my point to. Number 5, I'm going to get off line. 6, I'm going to stop hit. 7, I'm going to stop hit. 8, I'm going to stop hit. 9, I'm going to stop hit. 10, 11, 12, and 12. I'm going to stop hit all of those attacks. Practice those using both the point. Now we're going to go again. You can do the same thing with the edge. You see that, and you stop, hit it. You stop, hit it. You stop, hit it. You stop, hit it. Just like that. 1 through 12. Trade off, go back and forth, get really good at trying to see that attack as it first forms, just as it starts, just as he gets ready, and launch your own counterattack and get there first. Stop his motion dead with a faster, straighter motion of your own. That's how you stop hit. One of my favorite ways to use a fighting knife defensively is in counter slashing. I like to use the edge to cut an incoming arm or hand and destroy it. When someone reaches out with a weapon and tries to cut me, if I can't stop hit, I'm going to counter slash. If I can't see it early enough to intercept that motion with a faster, straighter motion of my own, I'm going to try to destroy that hand so it doesn't come again. I'm going to try to cut that arm so severely that that person can't wield that weapon a moment longer. I'm going to show you how we do this. I'm going to have Ron come out here. When you practice this at home, the best way when you start out is to go with those 12 angles of attack. You may be tired of hearing about those by now, but keep practicing them because they're going to build line familiarization into your psyche. It's going to come into your subconscious to where when somebody cuts at you, you don't think that's a number one. Just cut anywhere. You react. You see it instantly. Now, when you're training, I want you to use your peripheral vision. Be hungry. One of the main things that you can do to improve your defense with a knife is be hungry to see. Be hungry to see that attack as it first develops. Be hungry to see it as it progresses. Be hungry to move and get out of the way. Every time, now I'm going to go back to our diagonal footwork now. When I see him cut one, I want to move. I don't want to stand there unless I'm so slow or I'm so confused or sometimes you're just frozen here like a pillar of salt and he cuts and you're stuck there and you still can't move but you still have to defend. When possible though, I want you to move. I want you to get an angle. Let me explain why. As Ron's cutting, this cut's going to go all the way around like that as he pulls that back to himself. It's going to develop most of its power right here. Just about here. It's going to start losing power as it returns. Okay? If you want more time to react, you want to step to what we call the zero pressure area. He has almost no force over here. He has lots of force right here in that cutting stroke. But as that cutting stroke continues around, it loses power. So if I step diagonally in, I have more time to deal with that. I have more time to see that stroke, to analyze it, to judge it, and to counter it. The other way that I can deal with that attack is, instead of going to the zero pressure area, is to step away from it, outside, this way, here. That's perhaps the safer way. If you have time in a knife fight and you have some room, the safest thing is to get out here and intercept it and counter slash it as you get away. Get clear out here, get your edge on it, pull it through, wreck the arm. But sometimes you want to go here and destroy him instantly. So your movement depends on your space, your geography, your topography, what's around you. You know, if you've got a bunch of tables and chairs all over the place, you may not have the luxury of stepping back. The only thing you can do is go here and cut him and get out of the way. That may be the only move you can make. But as you learn to counter slash, the first place to start is with this, following the 12 angles of attack. So Ron's going to cut him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12. Again, be in motion, keep in movement, and practice your diagonal stepping. Get used to stepping this way, then stepping back. Get behind your knife. Get used to stepping this way. Get behind your knife. Just like we taught you earlier. Practice this until it's second nature. A moment ago, I taught you about counter slashing. It's really one of my preferred ways to stop an incoming knife attack or an attack with any weapon. I like to cut that hand or cut that incoming arm and destroy it. But sometimes you can't do that because your feet are in blocks of concrete. I can't explain that phenomena. Sometimes you just can't move. You feel like your feet are super glued to the floor and you can't move them. when that happens to you, it's a good idea to know how to block with your knife. Now, the way I want to teach you to block with the knife is to use your edge and put it up and intercept and stop dead that incoming attack. Ron comes out here, and he slowly cuts number one. I'm going to block that. Now notice I didn't cut through his arm, and I didn't chop through his arm. All I did is I took the edge of my training knife. Remember, this is supposed to represent a Bowie knife. And I stuck it here and stopped dead his forward motion. Now, the danger is that I may not have damaged this hand. Now, it's not good for anybody's forearm to run into a 17-ounce razor-sharp knife edge. That's not going to do anybody a lot of good. But since there's no motion, we don't know if that edge bit or not. We don't know if it sheared in there or did it just stop it doing superficial damage. I don't know for certain that I destroyed this arm. Now, when I stop him dead blocking like that, Ron's free to pull back and cut me. And cut my hand as he withdraws. Try it again. I block and he cuts. I block and he cuts me. I block and he cuts me. Just like that. Right across the thumb. I'm telling you, even with the trainer that time, that didn't feel good. If that was a razor sharp knife, I'd be like our famous four fingers woo, holding my knife with four fingers, and not very well at that. So that's the danger in blocking. But it's a lot better to block the knife than it is to take it in the face or take it in the neck. Now, you can supplement your blocking sometimes. If I block this knife, I block it, I can knock it out of the way. I block it, and I can pass it to the other side, like that. You can use your live hand. Now, we're going to be touching on that in just a few minutes, and how to use your live hand, your extra hand, to help you. And you can use this defensively, too. So, sometimes when you stand there blocking, you want to pass it to the overside. Sometimes you block it, you just want to shock it out of the way so you can get your own stab in. One of the ways that you can practice blocking is the same thing as with counter slashing. I'm not going to bore you with endless repetitions, but he cuts one, he cuts two, I block, he cuts three, I block, he cuts four, I block, he cuts five. Now, there's not as much foot movement with blocking, because if you could move, you'd counter slash him, or you'd counter stab him. You wouldn't stand there like a pillar of salt and just put your knife there. But with blocking, it's a last desperate attempt to keep that knife out of your gut pile or out of your face. You can block, 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 block. Now, as you get better, I want you to put in your live hand. We're going to teach you more how to use that later, but always remember that this hand can help you. It can help you get him out of the way, and you can just take him to the ground like that very easily. All right? I want you to practice blocking. One person attacks, one defends, and then you switch. Hey, don't put so much speed and power in it that you're overcoming his defense. Give him a good chance to defend. I'm going to go slow, slow, slow. Make big motions that he can pick up. Okay? Don't sit there and like that when you're first starting. All right? Give him a chance to get some skill going for himself. Try it, practice it, make it your own. Learn how to block. Live a lot longer. Now I'd like to add to the instruction I just gave to you about counter slashing and blocking. The skills that you learn in blocking and counter slashing will also stand you in really good stead if you're ever in a situation where you're attacked by multiple unarmed opponents or by an opponent where there's a huge disparity in force. In other words, this opponent is so big, so strong, and so heavy that your chances of emerging from that altercation without being gravely injured are very, very small. When you face a huge disparity of force situation where the opponent has overwhelming advantage in you in strength, size, height, weight, reach, you might think about using a weapon. Because when you're in that kind of a situation, for instance, a professional wrestler attacks a 200-pound man. That pro wrestler may weigh 320 pounds. He could probably bench press 500 pounds. The average 200-pound man can't even bench press his body weight today. He can't even bench press 200 pounds. There's a huge difference in strength and experience and size and reach. And that person that's not armed has got no chance without a weapon. He's going to get beat to death. So when you're facing that, or multiple attackers where 3 or 4 people are beating you and pummeling you and kicking you, to try to defend yourself with your hands and feet and emerge without going to the hospital gravely injured, your chances are very, very slim. At that point, a knife will stand you in good stead. Now, you can use your knife to defend yourself against punching, kicks, just as easily as you can another knife. If Ron comes in, I'm going to have him leave his knife in for a moment. If he attacks me with his knife and then punches, I can pick that up too and countercut that. It's very easy for me to cut that. So Ron, I'm just going to have you go and then put your punches in. Just like that. You can pick the knife up, you can use your live hand, and use your knife to pick up his cuts and his punches. As I mentioned earlier, the face is a prime target for an experienced knife fighter. Lots of people crouch and give you their face. A lot of people aren't aware of the fact that the face is a really good target. They think the abdomen and the torso is the target when it's really the face. The face is a great place to cut or stab somebody. It stops them almost 99% of the time. A good stab in the face, the Romans found that out thousands of years ago. It finishes people. They're done. They don't want to fight anymore. If you don't want to find your opponent's knife in the middle of your face, I suggest you learn how to parry. We're going to teach you how to parry right now. All a parry is using your knife to redirect your opponent's incoming knife or knife hand out of the way. You're just going to push it out of the way slightly so it misses. I like to combine a parry with a step to the side. I'll step this way or I'll step this way as I parry. What I want to do is get my body off his line of attack. If someone is stabbing me right down my center line like this, I want to get out of the way and parry. Don't stand there like a bag of cornmeal. Move. Okay? Move. Don't stand there when someone's trying to stab you. Always move and parry. Now Ron's going to come in. He's going to go really slow motion. There's a couple of different ways that you can parry. I prefer, the best parry is to actually cut his knife hand or the weapon hand. I don't care what weapon it is. If you can get your knife on it and damage it so he can't come again, that's the highest and best use of the parry. When he comes, I want to get over here and cut his thumb and fingers off. When he comes, I want to get over here and cut his thumb off from the back side. That's the highest and best use of the parry. The problem is, the thrust to your face is really elusive. It's fast. If it comes right between your eyes, it's extremely difficult to see because the way our eyes are made, we can't see stuff that comes right directly between our eyes very well. It's hard to pick that up. So a stab at your face can be hard to pick up in time. Quite often, you won't have the forewarning to counter slash or stop hit. You won't be able to parry on his hand. You'll actually have to parry on his blade. If I parry late on his hand, he's hit me. See this? I've already ate his blade. Sometimes I have to come here on the blade and get out of the way. Quite often, I'm so late in picking that up, if I go to the hand or the arm, I eat his knife first. No good. That's definitely not good enough. So what you have to do is get offline and pick up his blade. Pick up his blade. Pick up his blade. Don't stand still. Now, to practice this, you've got to wear your fencing mask. Always. I'm going to demonstrate a little bit more now without it so I can instruct. But don't do what I do. I'm breaking my own rule here. Your eyes are too precious and too easily damaged. Don't risk them practicing. So Ron's going to stab, and I'm going to move. 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 Now, you can parry from right to left. I can knock his knife off to one side or the other. I can use the edge or flat of my blade. I can even use the back of my blade to parry with. I can get over here and knock it this way. Now the advantage of that, I'm going to give you all the information about knife fighting. When I use the back of my blade to parry with, like this, I knock it off, but now here's my edge over here. I want the camera to see that. That's my cutting edge. That goes right in his face. It's an instant quick kill. Here, here, just like that. It's the same way from this side. I pick it up here and cut him that way. Use the back of my blade to pick it up and go forward and slash his face and finish him very quickly. So there's lots of ways you can parry. You can parry up. You can get up underneath them like that. One of the things I like to do. Let's come out and try that again. He's going to stab me in the face, and I'm going to parry up. Lots of times I use my live hand to wrap this hand. There's a break right here. If I can't get the break, I at least shock him and move him for a split second, and I tie him up. Now, To win a knife fight, you only need milliseconds. It's not 1 second or 2 seconds. I need a fraction of a second. If I can knock his knife up and circle his arm here, just for a second, he's going to free that arm in less than a second. I know he is. But if I can shock that arm and hold him for just a millisecond, I can kill him. Or I can drag him down to the ground where I can finish him. So you need to practice the parry all different ways. You need to step off to the side and redirect it. You need to use the back of your blade, forehand and backhand. You need to lift it. When you lift it like this, you can kill him instantly. You need to practice the parry in all of its variations until you're an expert. My heart's desire is to give you the very best possible defense. I want you to have all the information and all the skill that I can give you to defend yourself when you're using a knife. To do that, I want to move into teaching you now how to use your live hand more actively in self-defense, how to use it to defend yourself in a knife fight. One of the things I'm going to teach first is the stop hit. I showed you how to stop hit earlier with your blade using the edge and point. Now I want to show you how you use your live hand to supplement your blade's point and edge. So if Ron cuts number 1 at me, and then he loads up to cut again, before he can get off, I can throw my own cross. So to show that again, he cuts, and I hit. Get him my hit before he unloads with his backhand. That's one of the ways that you can stop hit. It's risky, though. You need to have a clear opening. Sometimes, though, your knife's so positioned that all you can do is stop hit. You see him go, bang, you put in the stop hit. You see him go, bang, you put in the stop hit. It's not the very best defensive thing you can do. I'd always rather use my knife than my live hand. But when your knife for that brief moment in time isn't available, it's comforting to be able to use your live hand to hit with and to stop his motion. There's other ways to stop hit. We're going to work off the number 1 attack so you can see it. I can stop hit his hand here and stop the motion. I can stop hit on his forearm. I can stop hit on his bicep. Or I can stop hit on his shoulder. Let's switch so the camera can see that. I want to get it right about that angle. I can stop it here. I can stop it on his forearm. I can stop it on his bicep or his shoulder or his face, just like that. Stop hitting is risky. Just like when you're blocking. When I block something, he can pull and cut me. When I stop hit, he can move and cut me. Like if he goes to my stomach and I stop hit, he could come right around that up to my head. And all I can do is raise my arm. When someone tries to stab you in the stomach, you can use your live hand that way to stop hit. Now, I want you to pay close attention. Let's switch here so you can maybe see a little bit better. Whenever you're intercepting a stabbing attack, especially a hard stabbing attack at your abdomen, I don't want you to make contact and stop hit this way. I don't want your thumb on one side and your fingers on the other. It's just going to push your thumb back. It's not going to work. Your thumb and fingers have to be cupped, and they have to all be on the same side of his wrist or his forearm. But they all have to be working together. You cup it, you drop your body weight, and the optimum thing to do is to pin this arm into his thigh, or push it over here to his opposite hip and pin it just for a millisecond. That's the optimum way to stop hit. When he's cutting at you and you stop hit here, remember, he may go with his other hand and punch you. You need to pick that off. So you stop hit here, he may come here, and you have to go to do something else. So whenever you stop this line, remember, there's another line that may go. He may fire his other hand. So you stop hit here, he may pick this off, he may go again, and you can kill him right there. Okay? But I want you to be familiar with stop hitting. You can practice this. One person puts on his fencing mask, gets his knife out. The other person puts on a pair of leather gloves like this and has his training knife. You come up, you get in range, and this person, the initiator, is just going to cut 1 through 12. So cut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12. Okay? That's the way you can practice it. Get used to it. Get used to this, using this live hand to stop his motion with a stop hit. Looks kind of like a straight arm in football. You're going to stop that motion dead with this straight arm like that. You can straight arm the face. You can straight arm the chest. The main goal is to stop his forward motion as quick as you can when your knife isn't available. Yes, I'd much rather cut him than stop hit him. Sometimes, though, this isn't available for whatever reason. Then it's handy to know how to use your live hand to stop hit. Another way to make the best use of your live hand is to learn how to use it to beat your opponent's knife out of the way and create an opening for your knife. You use this hand to open a passageway for this blade. I'll show you how you do it. Have Ron come out here. Ron comes on guard. I see Ron has got this obstacle, this barrier between me and his torso. I want to get that barrier out of the way. I can beat it out of the way this way with my knife. I can actually knock it out of his hand like that and beat it out of the way. Or I can reach him with my live hand this way and knock it offline, beat it out of the way while I kill him. Now, the key to using your live hand to beat with is you have to take a step. At the same time your hand goes forward, you have to be stepping, because you have to close the distance separating you very, very quickly. If I want to beat his knife hand out of the way, I've got to move in on him instantly. And my only goal is to dominate this hand for a millisecond. Not a second, not a half a second. We're talking about a quarter of a second here. Just get my hand on this long enough for me to get my blade in. Just so it doesn't move. I knock it out of the way, disrupt it, dominate it, control it, if you will, just for a very, very brief period of time. Now I can beat it to the side, or I can beat it down this way. So if I see his knife is here and he's not paying attention, I'll beat it down like that. I want to trap it against his thigh like that and kill him. I'll show you again. From here, like that. It isn't even good to step on him. It's good to step on his foot if you can, just like that. It disrupts his balance horribly. Just like that. You can step on him and kill him. So you can beat the knife from the side and down. You can even beat the blade. If you can't reach the hand, if he has a single edge knife, the edge is usually down. You can cut him to the flat of the blade and beat it out of the way, or you can come to the top or back of the blade and pull it down. A double-edged knife, it gets riskier because there's an edge here and there's an edge here. So you can't put your hand on the top and you can't put it on the bottom. You can only hit flat on the sides. Now to do that, make sure your hand is flattened out like this. See that? Don't let it curl for that edge to bite on. Keep it flat. Keep your hand flat and beat that blade out of the way. You can beat it forehand or you can beat it backhand. You can use the back of your hand here and give yourself an opening for a quick kill. Now, earlier when we first started this tape, I was talking about the advantages and disadvantages of different fighting knives. If you're going to insist on carrying a tactical folder, you need to pay really close attention on how to use your live hand. Your blade is so short, without this hand to supplement it, you're not going to fare very well in a knife fight. So you're going to have to get really good at moving obstacles, moving a longer blade out of your way so that you can get your short blade in and kill somebody. You've got to practice this a lot. Train this at home. For your partner's safety, when you're moving, make sure he always has his fencing mask on, and it's a good idea for you to wear one as well when you train. Switch roles, train it often, and it'll do you good. When I can, I definitely prefer to use my fighting knife or trainer to parry with. But if that's not available, if that's out of place or out of time or out of motion, it's just not handy at that particular moment in time, I still will not hesitate to use my live hand to parry a thrust at my face. I don't want to get anybody's knife stuck in my mouth or in my eye or between my eyes or in my nose. I don't want anybody to stab me in the face with a knife. I prefer to deal with it with my fighting knife and cut his hand or direct it out of the way. But if that's not available for some reason, I won't hesitate to use my live hand. Again, just like in beating, I told you, you want to keep your parrying hand flat like this. Don't curl your fingers. And it's easy when you hit something for the edge of his knife to hook there and cut you. Keep them flat. Keep your thumb and fingers in a line like this, and use the flat of your palm or the flat of the back of your hand to parry with. Now what I'm going to demonstrate is a little dangerous because I'm not wearing a fencing mask. Don't you duplicate it at home. Whenever you practice these drills, I want you to make sure you're wearing your fencing mask. I'm going to leave mine off so I can talk. Ron's going to come out here and he's going to stab me in the face. Just a little faster. Notice I don't want to stand still. When Ron stabs, I want to move and get out of the way, and get out of the way, and get out of the way. Move. Sometimes you move your head like that. Don't leave your head here stationary. Move your head. Your head actually should move almost before your hand does. When you see this coming at you, move your head. That's more important than anything else. Move your head out of the way and use your hand to parry with. Use your hand. Parry. Move it out of the way. Now remember, like we said earlier, if you're late, you may have to parry with your live hand on his blade. I prefer because I get more control on his wrist or the front part of his forearm. But if I have to, I'll go to his blade. Try to move it with the flat of your hand offline. Recover yourself and kill him. If you have to use this, it sure would be nice to be able to counter with your blade and finish the fight, because this is risky. This is scary, but it's not near as bad as taking his knife in the face. So I want you to practice getting used to parrying, getting out of the way of his knife and using your live hand. Use your knife sometimes and then put in your live hand. Switch off. Parry, parry, parry. Parry, parry, and stab him, just like that. Using your live hand to block an incoming attack from your opponent's knife isn't the optimal defense. The best thing to do, like I said earlier, is to stop hit it or counter slash it. But sometimes, for whatever reason, all you can do is block that incoming knife using primarily the outside of your arm. I prefer to use the back of your hand and the outside of your forearm, because if you're going to take a cut, which we're going to try to avoid, but if you're going to get cut, you want to get cut on the outside. As I said earlier, the inside of the forearm and wrist control the muscles and tendons that allow you to grip your knife. If I have to switch my grip from my right hand because it's injured to my left hand, I still want to be able to grip this knife. So I want to protect my ability to continue to grip a knife. That's why whenever possible, you want to use the outside of your arm or the back of your hand. Sometimes, though, you're going to be forced to use the palm, especially on attacks that are coming at you with a bent wrist. Sometimes when you use the back of your arm, those attacks go right around your defense or your passive block, and they strike you in the face or the body. So there's no set rule. You can't always just do one thing. You have to adapt to the situation. You have to be alert at all times. To make blocking work for you, you have to be hungry. You have to be ready to use this empty hand to save your life. I'm going to have Ron come out, and we're going to show you how to block slow motion at first. Ron's going to attack, and I'm going to block. Now, notice, when I come low, when he stabs low, I've got to drop my butt. You don't bend over here like this with your legs straight to block. Bend your knees, come down. Now, it's a good idea to look up. If he throws the other hand, maybe you do this and kill him right there on the spot. Okay? So remember, when you're blocking, there's something else that can come. Maybe you have to come back here, wipe his eyes, and stab him. That other hand can throw. So don't get so focused on just the knife that you forget that he has other weapons he can employ also. Let's go a little faster now, Ron. That's an idea of how you can use your live hand to block. Now, to drill this at home, what I want one person to do is to come on guard in their fighting stance. The other person is going to feed them the 12 angles of attack. He's going to cut one, and you're going to block. He's going to cut two, you're going to block. He's going to cut three, you're going to have to step to block. He's going to cut four. Now, when you see cuts coming at your abdomen, forehand and backhand, you need to knock those down. If you just do this, quite often they'll slide right underneath you and cut you. You've got to knock those things down. When he cuts forehand, you've got to knock it down. Optimally, I would have liked to have done this, but remember, this is out of commission for whatever reason. So I have to come here and block it that way and stop it dead. Now, he can pull back and cut me just like that. That's the danger of blocking. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. Train this a lot. Remember, your eyes are vulnerable. Wear your fencing mask. It's not pleasant. You're going to have to endure some bruising on your forearms to get good at blocking, but it's worth the effort. It could save your life. As I mentioned just now, whenever possible, I prefer not to use my live hand to just passively block an opponent's attack, because there's always that possibility he can pull back and cut me. Instead, I like to use steering. Now, what you do when you're using steering is you're intercepting his cut or stab, and you're redirecting it to a safer position so that you can launch a counterattack or get out of the way and get some distance between your opponent. Now, the way you do steering differs if you have a knife in your hand or you don't have a knife in your hand. I have certain options open to me when I have both hands available to steer, and some of those options are closed when I only have one knife hand or one empty hand to work with. Also, I want you to keep in mind as we do these training exercises with the live hand that this is training. This isn't knife fighting. We're just isolating elements of knife fighting so that you can learn them and practice them at home. You're not going to take 6 cuts in a row like this in a knife fight. It's over by then. If you're standing at that range, it's over by then. What we're going to do is we're going to keep working on this so that you can pick up that first cut or that second cut. You've seen all those angles of attack so many times in your training that without thinking about it, you can pick up the 1 or 2 and get in your own stroke and finish the fight. So don't be surprised when you're training if you miss some of these and they go home. They're going to. Bruce Lee said that if 2 equal fighters are fighting at close range where neither one of them has to take a step to reach the other one, the defender is doing very well if he can pick up and defend against 50% of his opponent's attacks. In knife fighting, you have to be a whole lot better than that because you can't allow any of them to go through if you don't want to be maimed or killed. So working on your defense is extremely, extremely important. Now, let's get back to steering. When Ron cuts number 1, I can intercept this and move it out of the way. Or I can try to get on the other side of it here. So what I can do is I can meet it, and I'm going to have to adjust my hand here and swing it out of the way like that. Now notice, I got to hollow my body out, or I swing his blade right through my gut pile. So if I meet it on this side, I absolutely intercept it on this side here. We call that meeting the arm. If I meet it, I've got to hollow out. Lots of times I'll step back like this and vacate that space. Now, as you do this, swing his arm and throw it. Don't just let go over here like this and go like that. It's still there. Do this. When you throw it, you can barge him just like that and sail him. All right? So it's really important that whenever you're redirecting something down at your stomach, you hollow out and give some space for that knife to go through. The other way that you can intercept this attack is to step back and get on this side. Let's show it from this angle. I'm going to get on this side of his arm, and I'm going to follow it and direct it over to this side. Again, if I'm successful, I can almost pin his arm here, step in, and barge and knock through him, just like that. So you have 2 options when you're steering. You can meet the attack, or you can follow it. Now, if I don't have a knife, my options are a little bit better. I'll meet the attack, and I'll steer it out of the way. Cut 1, cut a little higher here, and I steer it out of the way. If he cuts number 3, I can use this arm. Now look, if I have a knife in my hand, I can't drop the knife, reach over here and do that. That'd be stupid. If my knife's not available, I'm going to do this. Now, I might come in here and try to capture his arm just for a split second. If I don't move on that arm, he's going to use that arm. He's going to cut me. So if you get here, try to capture that arm. Step in on it. With practice, you'll get it. When you feel this, you just curl up around it like that and circle it. And now, you've got a lot of options. Get sensitive on your arms and your hands. When you feel something hit here, it's easy, once you've done it a few thousand times, to wrap it like that. Oh, people say, oh, you can't do that. Oh, yes, you can. When I first started studying Kali in 1980, I said no one could sidestep a knife thrust. It wasn't until about 86 of nonstop practice that I found sometimes in sparring, I'd actually get out of the way of a knife thrust. I said at that time, it's impossible. No one can do it. It's superhuman. It's not. Don't judge other people by your lame ass. Just because you can't do it right now doesn't mean that you can't do it in the future. Learning how to steer is really important. It can save your life in a knife fight. Here's how you train it at home. 1, put on your fencing mask. One person gently is going to cut. He's going to cut 1, steer it out of the way. He's going to cut 2, steer it out of the way. He's going to cut 3, drop on it. Now, notice when he cuts 3, that I have to drop my body weight and knock it down as I steer it out of the way. He cuts 4, same thing. I knock it down. He stabs 5, I move out of the way. Now, I wasn't really able to steer it in a good spot. I pushed it out here. Now here again, I'm going to wrap it like this. Now I can put it in the knee, and I can drag him down. Bang! And strip the knife. Go through the 12 angles of attack very slowly. Give your partner lots of time to practice. Come in here, Ron. Practice meeting the blade or practice following the blade. Sometimes if I see that backhand coming, I'll come here. I'll follow it. I'll get on this side of it. Now, when I follow it, I want to fling it out. Sometimes exactly that will happen. You'll throw it so hard that it'll come right out of your opponent's hand. I want you to work with this, experiment with it, practice it. Every time you get to knife fight, practice this meeting and following, steering your opponent's blade to a safe area. I've been training in knife fighting for the past 23 years. There hasn't been a week hardly that's gone by that I haven't trained 2 or 3 times in knife fighting during that week. Over this time period, I haven't found a better way to use your live hand defensively than to consider this hand as if it was a knife. Anything else is too slow. And we're going to get into this, especially if you're unarmed against a knife. Right now, I'm going to teach you how to use your hand, your live hand, as a knife against an opponent armed with a knife. And it's the same scenario that we've been talking about. Your own knife, for whatever reason, is unavailable for your defense or offense at that particular moment in time you're being attacked. You have to use your live hand. The best way to use this is to think about it as being a knife. Now, I'm going to drop that so I can illustrate. Right here on your palm, you've got a thick pad of flesh just below your little finger. There's a little thick pad of flesh and muscle right here. That's your striking surface. That's the edge of your knife. You use this to cut into your opponent. You can cut into his arm. You can cut into his face. You can cut into his neck. You can cut into his collarbone. You can cut into his body. Anything he throws at you can be cut into with this portion of your hand right here, this fleshy portion right here. It's shock absorbing, it takes up the shock of the impact, and it also concentrates all the force of your arm, shoulder, legs, hips, everything. It's concentrated on a narrow area. When I was training with one of my training partners, Manny Marquez, now Manny is a semi-pro football player, and he could take a tremendous punch. He's a great gifted natural athlete. He can hit you so hard with the left hook that when you cover it, he knocks you almost a half a step sideways. Really, really good athlete. And one day we were training, and it didn't seem like anything I could do would make an effect on him. I took off the 14-ounce boxing gloves, put on my leather gloves, and used those. Just as an experiment. I hit him one time on the cheek with the edge of my hand, and it was a fight finisher. Just one time like that. Bang! That penetrated. He didn't want any more of that. I'm telling you, this edge of the hand really works, especially when you're defending yourself with your live hand. Now, what I want you to do is, when you see your opponent's incoming attack, I want you to cut into it. Now, again, you're going to hear this a couple times from me. I don't want you to be mamby-pamby about this. Now is the time to attack that arm ferociously with your spirit, with your might, with your power. Everything in there. You're going to consider this a knife. This is the knife edge. I'm going to chop his arm off. Right here. Bang! That's what happens quite often is, remember I told you, the tendons and muscles that control that grip are on the inside of the arm. When you attack that, quite often you loosen his grip and he loses the knife. You can attack on the thumb or the fingers if you have to. You can hit the bicep. I prefer, though, to cut in here, diagonally, right in this area on his arm with the edge of your hand. Not only does it shock his grip for a moment, a millisecond, it makes his whole arm vibrate. It shocks it backwards. Ron can tell you, how does this feel, Ron, when I do that? Do you feel like cutting me at that moment? Do you feel like it? Do you think you can countercut? At that moment in time, bang, I cut that. It's not pleasant. I'm hitting him hard. I don't like him. I hate him at that moment. I hate his guts. I hate this, and I'm coming for his life right now, just like that. That's the attitude you have to have when you're using your hands as knives. Now, to train this, we're going to do it just like we did with the different blocking drills. One person is going to cut 1 through 12. The other one is going to feed him those angles. You know, he's going to feed him 1 through 12 very slowly. The person that's practicing, the defender, he's going to cut in to that arm. To that arm. Now, notice I have to adjust my stance, my position, to get the right angle to intercept. I just can't stand here very well and just cut a few angles. I can't stand here like a block of salt and do this. It's much more helpful if I move. 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 Practice your body English, your body mechanics. Get used to adjusting your body so they can get the edge of your hand on the target. I just showed you how you could use your live hand as a knife to intercept and stop your opponent's attack with both point and edge. I also want you to understand that if you don't have a knife, your best way to defend yourself is to consider both your hands as knives. A knife attack is so evasive and elusive. It's so frighteningly quick, and that knife can change direction so many times before it gets to you that any other mindset is too slow. If you don't think your hands as knives, if you don't use them as knives, you'll never be able to keep up with the fluidity of an opponent's knife attack. All this other stuff just won't work. It's too slow. The only thing that's fast enough is to have the same mindset as the person with the knife. You have to be a knife fighter too. But at that moment, you don't have knives. You don't have another weapon. All you have is your hands and feet. You have to think of your hands as knives to keep up with this attack. I'm going to have Ron come in here, and I'm going to demonstrate this. Now, the main thing is you want to be relaxed, and you don't want to be rigid. You have to be really supple, and you have to have an extremely heightened sense of alertness. You have to make your eyes go way out here. You want to get your peripheral vision. Think about your peripheral vision. You want to see all of this person. Don't tunnel in on a small area because you'll miss some of those cuts. You want to keep your gaze wide, as wide as you can. Also, you want to press into him with your spirit. You've got to push into him with your spirit. If you don't, you're not going to even last a second or two. He's going to overcome you. You have to push in with your spirit. You also have to have the attitude you're going to hurt him. You've got two goals. You're going to either hurt him so badly that he can't continue, or you're going to hurt him badly enough that you can escape. Listen, whenever you can, run from a knife. No one is paying you to stand in the street with some thug and knife fight him. You're not going to get $1 million for it. They're not going to take out an ad saying you vanquished some punk at a knife fight in the middle of the LA Times. There's nothing in it for you. Always run. Your ego, your will, your reputation, none of that counts when you're being maimed or killed. All right? Always run from a knife. If you can't, you're going to have to fight. The best way to fight if you don't have a weapon is to use your hands as knives. If Ron cuts number 1, I'm going to attack him. If he cuts number 2, I'm going to attack him. If he cuts number 3, I'm going to attack him. And I'm going to keep attacking him. Let me spin Ron around. I can strip it. Now I can kneel. I can hit him. I can step over and armbar him. Just like that, and finish. Break his elbow, and he's no longer a threat. Lots of ways for you to use your hands as knives. The main thing is you have to have tremendous forward pressure, forward energy, that you don't like this person. You show him absolutely no respect. No respect. He's not your training partner. You don't care anything about him. You hit his knife hand, you hit his face, you hit his neck, you hit his face, you hit him, and you're constantly kneeing him and elbowing him. You get that knife and you strip it out of the way. Now you can stab him with it if you want. That's the mindset you have to have when you don't have a knife and you're facing an opponent that does. Keep your hands as knives. Think of them as knives. Cut into him, injure him, take his knife away, take him out. To train this at home, I have Ron come back in here. What I want you to do is one person is going to be the aggressor, the other one's going to be the defender. If you have a fist helmet, I'd like the aggressor to put on a fist helmet. I have Ron bring that in. A fist helmet gives Ron really good protection. It's got a good face shield. It's heavily padded. You can go pretty hard against a tough opponent wearing a fist helmet. If he doesn't have something like this, you have to show him so much respect that you lose a lot of your ferocity in your defense. What I want you to do is, if this is accessible to you, one person is going to attack, the other person is going to cut into that attack with his knife, and he's going to deliver simultaneous defenses. Just like that. I wipe his eyes, backhand him, palm strike him. You don't, if you get this knife, just like that. I went a little rougher than normal because most training partners aren't going to let you do that to them. If you have an average training partner, you're going to be able to do this. Use your hand as knives. Now, simulate the hit. 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 Just like that. You're going to have to simulate it. What I want you to get used to, though, is cutting in and attacking. Don't stand here, cut into his arm, then attack him. It has to be like that simultaneously. Practice like that. Getting used to using your hands as knives will also be of great benefit to you in self-defense situations where there's no weapons involved. You can use your hands as knives against an empty hand attack as well as an attack involving weapons. You can cut into your opponent's arms and legs, you can cut into his body, you can stab him with your fingertips, you can hit him with your palms, you can slap him. You have all the other tools at your disposal too. You can use your elbows, you can use your knees, you can use your feet. You can put in all of your natural weapons, but getting used to using your hands as knives will make your responses very, very fluid and very fast. There's nothing faster than a knife. Why? Because, again, to reiterate, a knife does its job without requiring power. There's no power involved with a knife to be effective. So all it has to do is be fast. To keep up with that, your hands have to be fast too. That transfers over into empty hand defense. We're going to show you in slow motion how you can use your hands as knives to defend yourself in a street attack. I'm going to call Ron in here. All I want you to do is come into your knife fighting stance. Same knife fighting stance. Bring your hands out in front of you. Now these are knives, just like this. You can pick off his jab. You can pick off his cross. You can stop a combination just by stepping into it and cutting back, just like you do in a knife fight. When he jabs, crosses, I cut into his face with my own. You don't have to wait for his third punch. You get used to, in knife fighting, you get used to stepping in. That's going to help you a lot in a street altercation. Someone takes a big haymaker, your hit's simultaneous. You see that punch coming, you cut into it, and you cut into him. If he throws on that side, same thing. If he throws two haymakers, people come in like this, swinging wild. And you get used to that. You cut into that. You watch that motion, just like that. Finish him. Your hands are knives. If he tries to kick you, you can come in here and take that easily. Get another kick. Take him down again, just like that. Think of your hands as knives. Anything he does, you cut into it. Just like that. Knife fights are won or lost with a half inch or an inch and a half. It only takes a half inch of your blade across your opponent's face to wreck his night. You're going to destroy his life with running a half inch of the tip of your blade across his face. It only takes an inch of your blade run across somebody's abdomen like that to disembowel them. You're going to cut through the shirt, you're going to cut through the skin, the muscle wall, those intestines are going to flop out. Hey, he's finished as a knife fighter right there on the spot. Judgment of distance is absolutely crucial in a knife fight. Until you're a master of judging the distance separating you and your opponent and the reach of your knife, you'll never be an expert knife fighter. Perhaps the greatest masters of judging distance were the Japanese samurai. Years ago, they understood how important the study of distance was. They called the study mai. The Japanese warrior that was really capable knew within a fraction of an inch just how long he was away from his opponent. He knew the distance between the tip of his sword and his opponent to the hair on your head. That's how accurate it was. He knew it perfectly. He knew exactly when he could touch you and at what distance. And he knew when his opponent could touch him. You have to become an expert at mai. You have to become an expert at judging the distance separating you and your opponent and where you can touch him with your knife and where he can touch you. And it's complicated because as we're teaching you in those footwork drills, different footwork methods allow you to greater reach. If I take one step, I have a certain amount of reach. But if I lunge, I have even greater reach. I can stab this way, I can take a step and stab, or I can lunge and really reach out and touch somebody. You have to know your range to your opponent, and you have to know the range to him. I can't emphasize this enough. Here's how you can work on increasing your knowledge of mai and become an expert at judging distance. Get your training partner. I'm going to have Ron come in here. Ask him to just come in an on-guard stance. Get opposite him in your on-guard stance. You should be able to touch him with your knife without taking a step. Can you touch his hand? All right. Here's a really good distance to start at. I can touch his hand with my knife. Now, can I touch his forearm with my knife without taking a step? Yep, I have to lean a little bit to touch it though. Can I touch his alive hand without taking a step? I have to lean and turn my shoulder. See, there's things you can do to add reach to your knife. One of them is you can bend your knee and lean. You can bend your knee, lean, turn your shoulder, which makes your arm longer, and extend. You can also change your grip from a forward grip to palm reinforced grip. That's going to give you even more reach. All these factors you have to take into account when you're studying distance. Once you know accurately the distance that you can reach your opponent, you need to change up. Now, where can I reach him? By taking a little step. Can I reach him here? If I'm facing Ron here, can I reach him? Nope. Can I lean? Just barely. So come back a little bit more. Can I reach him by bending my knee and leaning? Not quite. So at this distance, look at, we're about 4.5 feet separating ourselves right now. I take a small step, bend my knee, lean, turn my shoulder, bang. That's the distance right about here where I have to take even a small step to reach him. Now, what if I get back here? What if I take a bigger step, lean, and turn my shoulder back and change my grip? Can just barely reach him. What's my lunge distance? What's the maximum distance that I can reach his hand with a lunge? I say, based on my judgment, it's about 6 feet. It's maybe right about here for me. I take a big step, turn, and reach, and I can hit him with a lunge. Okay? That's a long ways away. Some of you tall guys, you guys over 6 feet, you can stand 7, maybe 7.5, 8 feet away from your opponent. Most people don't think that you can take one step and stab them in the hand from here. This is what sets apart our method of knife fighting. We want to fight at long range. I want you to know to a fraction of an inch where you can touch your opponent at any point in time, and where, just as importantly, he can touch you. So you have to practice. You move around him. Where can I reach Ron's hand with a flèche? Can I reach it from here? Pretty easily. Look where my foot was. Look at the distance. It's a good 6 feet almost between my foot and his. Let me step back about another half a foot. What if I take a big step and lean? Nope. I just fall short. So I know I have to be a little bit closer when I flèche. My distance for a flèche is right about here, about 6.5 feet. Again, I'm only 5'9". If you're 6'4", you could be a foot and a half, depending on how long your arms are and legs are, further away than I could. Some of you guys, I dare say, could be 8.5 feet away from your opponent with your front leg and still reach him with one single big flèche or lunge. You really have to practice developing your ability to judge reach. Now, it's not just to the knife hand. You need to know, where can I reach his lead shoulder at? I can reach his hand from here. Can I reach his shoulder from here? Just barely. Back up a little bit. Can I reach it from here? Not really. I'm going to have to take a little step. Maybe you have to take a little adjustment step to the side. I'm going to show you this later in strategy, but lots of times you can change your space or the distance that's separating you and your opponent by just real subtle motions. You make just a little bitty angling step in like this. Lots of people won't pick that up, especially if you bring your knife up at the same time. You do this, and I have it, just about have it, just like that. So you have to learn what little small adjustments you have to make to get the reach that you want, to strike the target you want. If you can't strike that target without taking a step, you have to judge, how big a step do I have to take? The bigger step you take, the more warning you give your opponent. If you can take up space without him noticing it and stick him in the hand, that's the best thing to do. You always want to take up space without alerting him to the fact that you're taking up that space and closing that distance. You need to know where you can reach his face at. We've talked about in this presentation so far how important the face is at a target. But the face is defended by this knife hand. It's a long ways in to that face. There's a good 18 inches between Ron's knife hand and his face right now. Where can I stab him at the face at? It's a good target. It's usually a fight finisher. I want to get that face, but I have to be pretty close. I can't reach it from here no matter what I do. I'm going to have to take a step. I'm going to have to take a little step to reach that face. I can step this way too and reach the face. So it's not always all off your lead leg. Sometimes you take up space with your rear leg. Sometimes I take it up this way. Sometimes I take it up this way. You have to be subtle. You have to be clever. The more clever you can become at taking up space and closing the gap, separating your opponent without him noticing, the better knife fighter you're going to be. You have to train to know what your reach is to his torso. So back up and think about it. Can I reach his torso here with a lunge? I think so. If you reach it pretty easily, you might have another inch or so that you can move back. What's your flèche distance? Can I reach him here? Yep. Look at where my front foot started. I'm a good 6 feet away almost from Ron. Experiment with this. Get your training partner, one person comes on guard, and practice developing and knowing what your reach is to all the different targets. His face, his lead knife hand, his forearm, his shoulder, his torso, his leg. Get familiar with where you have to be to reach those with all the different attacks at your disposal. That's the study of my. Now, at the same token, you have to be just as familiar where he can reach you. You don't want to wander into his range and be unaware. A guy like Ron like this, he can cut me here with hardly even taking a step. Just bending, okay? When you're this close, man, you have to be on red alert, all right? Now right back here, I know he almost has to take a step to reach me. I still have to be alert, but not near as on fire and red hot as I do when I'm in this close or this close. Back here, I still have to be alert. When I'm out here, I'm pretty safe. Let's switch. You need to know where you're outside of his lunge or flèche distance. He can't take one step and reach me from here. Try. Falls way short. Okay? Those are the things that you need to do. And you also have to be able to do them with different sizes of opponents. Try to train with the people with different body types as much as you can when you knife fight. Tall guys, short guys, thin guys, fat guys, they all have advantages and disadvantages. They'll all give you different reactions. They'll all give you different feedback. Experiment. Practice this a bunch. This concludes the training we're going to do in this volume. Remember, repetition is your friend. You need conditioned reflexes, and the only way you're going to get them is to practice these techniques thousands and thousands of times. Remember your safety. Always wear a fencing mask when you're training and protect your vision, as no one can replace your eyesight. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it.